keep hearing.
And we are now live on Facebook. To keep hearing. What were you saying?
I just wonder when I keep hearing that the market is somewhat undervalued, you know, or there's still a lot of good deals out there.
Yeah.
So I play golf with a couple of guys that one guy's an investment advisor, and he said, well, you know, there's still good values. I'm thinking, wow. Okay.
I know Monday morning I figured that Tesla's going to be a good deal because, you know, over the weekends when they said he's got to step down,
You know,
and sure enough, man, the price went up 14% Monday. So there are but there are deals out there, I'm sure.
yeah, it's tough. I wish I was a little more on the inside.
I'm not at all.
You know, when you get the stock options in the old days, and,
Yeah.
you know, those are good deals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's put the cans on and do a mic check.
All right, Jerry. Ready? All right, Jerry. Check, check, check.
Check, check, check.
A little closer. You can point it closer to you. There you go.
Check, check, check.
Got it. 2 seconds. So how long have you been a member at Northridge?
2.5 years.
2 years.
Yeah. Yeah, just, am I gonna hear music the whole time I'm talking?
Yes, until it starts.
Till it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been at Northridge 2.5 years, really enjoy it, great membership, a lot of good social events.
Yeah.
You just,
It's a nice course.
it is, and they renovated the greens and bunkers, and they did a real nice job. So nice, so nice of a job. They made it tough. I mean, they made that course really.
Really?
Yeah. There was a lot
tougher.
tougher.
Those of us that aren't that good at golf, it was already tough. Now it's tougher.
No, it's tougher.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, you know, most of the holes have sloped greens, and you
Okay.
get these curb shots, snake shots. It's really, it's hard, and the bunkers are tough. They're deep, and they're all, you know, like big bowls.
Yeah, yeah.
The sand is fluffy, so you have to get used to hitting out of sugar.
Right.
And so, and a lot of the old timers I talked to said, you know, I used to love playing this course. Now it feels like a job.
That's too bad.
Yeah. It's great though. They did a great job. Compliments, everybody compliments it, but everybody realizes it's hard.
Yeah.
It's just you get on the green. There's no easy two putt.
Great.
We could put a plug in there for Northridge. We can play golf with Ed at Northridge.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember I think I'm almost positive 2 of your guys last November I took out there when they were renovating it. We had the temporary greens at the time.
Okay.
I was gonna look up the name and I just forgot. It's been a while.
Did they have a particular area that they focused in?
No, your firm your name changed, right, from a different accounting firm?
Yeah, it was Galena. We were Galena.
Yeah, that's right. They're from Galena. Yep. They said they changed the name on the door, and it's
Yeah.
pretty much the same
Yeah.
office except the name changed.
Yep. Yep.
It was a manager and a partner. These young guys, around 40.
Okay. Oh gosh, we got Tim, Robbie. Robbie doesn't golf that much. Tim golfs. John, Josh.
Might have been Josh.
Tim and Josh both the pretty long hitters.
Yeah, might be Josh.
Kind of taller guys, both of them.
Yeah, tall.
Josh played college tennis, so he's.
Oh.
I've known a few guys that played tennis and then golf, and it seems like that translates well.
Yeah.
He can hit the ball all the time. So. But he's also got the rest part. He's also got the rest of his game, so. It's nice. Do you have a regular group you play with?
Pretty much, but I like to play with other guys. I'm in the Sandbaggers group on Saturday, so these guys, about 50 of them, I think, approximately. And they have their own little mini tournaments, but it's a good way to meet new members and play with different guys. So it kind of breaks up the routine of playing with certain people, which is fun. But you want to meet other people.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Part of your purpose of being there is for the social aspect and meeting other people.
Yeah,
you can take advantage of.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you live in that area?
Orangeville,
Okay.
real close.
Nice.
How about yourself?
We live in Rockland,
Rockland?
Yeah.
Nice area.
which is close to the office, though. We're across the freeway from the office.
Oh.
So.
Number one high school I saw voted by the Sacramento Bee.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Which, Rockland or Whitney? Rockland. It's a great high school.
Rockland. It's a school. I don't. Yeah.
I've had two of my daughters that are all the way through, and our third one is in her senior year, so it's been a great education for them, for sure. So, yeah, we moved there from Elk Grove. When I first moved up here in '91, I moved to Elk Grove, so I was there from '91 to '05 or '06, and moved up to Rockland in '06. So Elk Grove has really grew a lot, but I don't like the way it was managed. Pepper done. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers on Mighty 105.5 FM. It's your host, Mark Bellows. I am a tax principal, a CPA with Clifton Larson Allen, which has offices throughout the U.S., and I'm in the Roseville office. We've got a number of industries that we work with, and I particularly specialize in manufacturing and distribution, construction, and real estate investment and development. And I tend to work with the business owners, the businesses, on tax planning, strategy, that sort of thing. Also get a chance to do some webinars every once in a while, and I've been doing one, so far I've done one, and I'm going to do a second one here in a couple weeks on the new Section 199A, the new 20% deduction for pass-through entity owners. So very exciting stuff. If someone wants to spend an hour listening to that stuff, get a hold of me, mark.bellows@claconnect.com, and I'll hook you up with a free webinar. You can also call me, 916-784-7800. Happy to talk to you about tax stuff, planning and strategy. We're getting towards year end, so it's a good time to do that. Also finishing up those who extended their personal returns. They're due October 15th, which is about 12 days away, and I'm working on that too, including my own, which probably will be done on Monday the 15th. So that's my story, and today my guest, this is a weekly business talk show. I like bringing in interesting guests, and we kind of get into their story, so it's a business talk show, but we like to go beyond the numbers, hence the name. And so today my guest is Ed Becmer, a CPA and a managing partner, right? Managing partner with Becmer Associates.
That's correct.
Morning, Ed. How you doing?
Pretty good, Mark. Yourself?
I'm doing good. There you go. So Ed, tell us a little bit about what Becmer Associates is and does.
Well, what we primarily do is I provide financial leadership and discipline to companies, and what I bring to the table is I have over 30 years of public and private company experience as a CFO controller from New York City to Silicon Valley. And now the last 3 years I'm living here in beautiful Sacramento. This year I was CFO of the year, 2018 small business.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
It's voted on by the readers of the Sacramento Business Journal.
That's correct.
Yeah, excellent.
Yep, I'm very humbled by that, and And then industries that I've been involved in have been from software companies to manufacturing companies, online websites, real estate, construction, distributors, and actually worked in a little bit in the airlines industry. But I would divide what we do into three major buckets, and I'm going to bifurcate it by saying, well, the first area is corporate finance. Second area is forward-looking planning and processes, and the last section I would group it into is financial process improvements.
Well, let's hold that thought for a second. So,
Okay.
A little bit about your background. So you went to San Diego State.
Correct.
But you also went to Villanova, right? So,
Correct.
So undergrad at Villanova?
Freshman year.
Freshman. Oh, okay. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Jersey.
Okay.
Watchung, New Jersey.
Okay. Watchung, New Jersey.
Yeah.
I went to college with the guy from Watchung, New Jersey.
Small world.
It is a small world. Watchung. Gosh, I tried Steve Geller. Anyway, so went to Villanova for a year, the Wildcats, and then you decided I'm going to move from the East Coast to the West and came out west.
That's correct.
What precipitated that?
My folks wanted to move out west.
Okay.
So I decided, they said, well, you can go to San Diego State University, and the school's near the beach. And when you're 19 years old, you figured, wow, that sounds like a good deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go from a school that was brick and mortar, almost looked like an Ivy League school, to a campus that's 5-10 miles away from the beautiful ocean.
And my as I mentioned off air, my daughter goes to school. One of my daughters goes to school there now, and it's changed a lot in the years since you were there. I graduated in '89 with my master's from there, and it's from '89 to now. It's changed a ton.
Oh,
They've really redone the school.
Yeah. I've been down there 10 years ago, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Didn't recognize it.
And even more so now.
Yeah.
So what'd you do? You graduated with a degree in what?
Accounting.
Oh, nice, yeah. And then what did you go and do from there?
Worked for Deloitte.
Okay.
Yep.
In San Diego?
Yes.
Okay. For how long?
2.5 years.
All right. And then
I decided my parents moved back east, back to the New York area. My father's health was waning. Unfortunately, he was sick, and I knew that his lifespan was not going to be long. So I decided I wanted to be closer to my dad, because my dad was a Pop Warner football coach, my Little League coach, and we were best friends growing up. So I decided I was going to take the plunge and move back. I know a lot of people thought I was crazy at the time, but I decided that I wanted to spend some quality years with my dad.
Sure.
And so then I ended up working in New York City with another accounting firm called BDO Seidman.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I went with a regional. Well, they're not a big four, but I wanted to build a firm that work with more or less small, mid-sized companies.
Yeah, and the way, for those who don't know, because I had a background at Big Eight at the same time as you, and even more so now that there's Big Four, but those companies tend to work with bigger companies. So
Right.
I know, and I came up here in Sacramento in '91, and PW was out, which I was with. We had some smaller clients, those that had maybe a few million revenue, but generally those firms focus on bigger ones. To your point, and so you wanted to go with the firm that had worked with smaller.
Well, that's
smaller
correct.
businesses.
Well, that's a good point, Mark, because in San Diego I worked with small businesses, okay, and in New York I didn't want to get stuck on some Fortune 500 company.
Which is what they would do.
Yeah, sure. And basically almost be the copy boy.
Yeah.
For bank recs or something. So
yeah, when you work one of those companies, a big Four, as I can
No.
say, you could work on one client or two clients the whole year.
That's correct.
And that could be all you do. Whereas with the smaller company or small firm that works in smaller companies, you can work on 15 clients. So it's a lot more. It's a lot different exposure, different experience.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's what you're going for with BDO.
Yes.
So how long were you at BDO?
Another 2.5 years.
Okay.
Or so.
So you're getting some good experience there, which will translate well into what you do today, of course. So where'd you go after BDO?
Well, I was recruited to a commercial real estate company in New York. It was a public company, very exciting. They had real estate holdings throughout the country, and they had a definitive agreement to acquire a bank. So now they're going to get into the banking industry and financial services. So I decided to take the plunge. I came in there as an accounting manager and started working there.
Good. And how long were you there?
I think that 6 years.
Okay. Did you work on numerous acquisitions as part of what you did?
There were some acquisitions, and then in the end, we ended up dissolving the company, selling it off. Like the banking industry, the timing wasn't the greatest because when I got there, things were booming, and then we went through another recession, and then the banking industry, particularly savings and loans, that we remember, were having a difficult time. So at that point in time,
what year was that? What year?
boy, that was back in 1991.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's when I came up to Sacramento, and
Yeah.
I came up here to work on a project for a bank, or a savings and loan that had been taken over by the feds. The old RTC, if you remember the Resolution Trust.
Oh, I
Fund.
remember
I'm
that.
sure you do. Yeah. So.
But it was exciting times.
Yeah.
You know, I got public company experience. We used to file public company statements for 2 different entities, and it was a $3 billion company. And the nice thing about that, I was promoted to controller within a year and a half of the company. And for a young man who's 29, 30 years old, to be controller of a Fortune.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, we're going to take a break. We're going to get back into the conversation with Ed Becmer of Becmer Associates. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers.
Great.
Good. This is good because I think this is all showing your varied experience and how well it's going to translate into what you do today. So,
Right. Okay, good.
yeah.
That went quick.
It goes really quick. You'd be surprised how much of this we won't get to. It's just, people are always amazed. How are we going to cover 46 minutes of air? And then the next thing you know, it's like, it's over.
What? I didn't even.
Yeah, I barely got through my list.
I didn't say my name.
You used to give out the number and we'd have people call in, but sometimes the call in, answering the questions and stuff would take 3 to 4 minutes. And so,
Yeah.
to your point, you're surprised how quick it goes, and if you take away 3 or 4 minutes of that, it goes even quicker. So, generally, I don't give out the number anymore because that way it's just the guest and I.
Yeah, yeah. Back.
We're back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers. I'm 1055. This is Mark Bellows, your host of this show, weekly business talk show. I meet with and interview guests from various areas within a business, CFOs, CEOs, owners, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always good to get a good, interesting guest in here to hear their story and find out what it is that made them successful and what they do today. I'm also a tax CPA. That's what I do 95% of my time. I work for a company called CLA, Clifton Larson Allen. We've got offices throughout the U.S., and I'm in the Roseville office. You can email me at mark.bellows@CLA Connect, or my phone number is 916-784-7800. I'm a tax guy, and I deal with predominantly manufacturers and distributors, contractors, and real estate investors and developers. So today we're talking with Ed Becmer, managing partner of Becmer Associates, a firm that works with small to middle to emerging market companies with their CFO and controller type of services. So typically companies that need that work. So we're getting into your background for the commercial. You went through the real estate company, and then you got. Did you say controller?
Yeah, I was controller of the real estate company as well as the bank. So
Okay.
I had both.
Nice. Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah.
So again, building some great experience, which is going to translate well into what you do today. So where'd you go after that?
Well, I went into another company called Alper Holdings. They were another commercial real estate company, but they also had, in addition to the real estate, they had manufacturing companies in the country as well.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the manufacturing companies were former old guard name companies that were still in their portfolio, but they were pretty much selling them off. And they were a public company at one time. They were reorganized before I came in there. In other words, I went through Chapter 11, and then now they're a new company. And so I got to see the remnants of what used to be there, and now some of the current holdings that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting run for a while.
So did you go and run some of the manufacturing businesses in the course of that, or what would you do?
They reported up to us in New York. They would send in their financial statements, and we would question them, and we would go through their numbers and look at their cash flow and how much cash flow they can push up to the mothership in New York, the holding company.
Right, yeah. Which is important.
Exactly.
That's what the holding company wants.
True.
Yeah. So what'd you do after that?
Well, then I just had another brief stint in public accounting. I was looking to do, I was working in New York, and then an opportunity came up in my backyard with a regional firm, CPA firm, and they liked my background because I had public company experience, and I came in as a senior manager, and I was doing audits of public companies. So I had a wide variety of different companies that I was auditing at the time, and I was traveling around the country, and now and then I was back in Northern California, and saying, wow, I do miss California. But it was a fun run, but all the travel added up, and what happened was I got an offer in Silicon Valley to be a CFO of a semiconductor company. And at that time, sadly enough, my father passed away, and he was gone, and my mother, we got her home in New Jersey, so she was comfortable at the time. So I felt it was maybe a good time to break away, and a lot of my family moved on out of the state, and I was looking for a change. I still had California in my heart.
Right.
Northern California is a little bit different than San Diego. I love San Diego.
Yes.
Miss it.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at it, and I was in my 30s then, I thought, geez, it's what an exciting place to be, Silicon Valley.
So what year was that you came out here?
98.
98, okay.
Yeah.
So how long were you at that semiconductor company?
That semiconductor company didn't make it.
Oh, okay.
It only lasted. It was on the up when they were selling me the company, and then shortly thereafter they went through a major hit in the semiconductor industry, and there was a major downturn, and the company was sold off about 8 months later. When I got there, it was one quarter was good, and then during the summer, I don't think it started in May. During the summer, there was a major decline in semiconductor, and I had some heavy discussions with the CEO, and I recommended that we have to cut headcount to survive. We just don't have the cash flow. But he kept thinking that it's going to turn around in the fall. It's going to turn around, but it never did. And
Right.
Ultimately, the cash flow wasn't sustainable, and ultimately it hurt the company, and they had to sell it off.
Right. So what'd you do after that?
Well, then I went to another company, small company called Graphon, took it public. So that was a lot of fun because,
Nice.
again, I went back on my SEC experience, working with a lot of little public companies, and prior to that, the big company. And
That's an exciting process to take a company public. It's stressful. It's a lot of time.
you're right. I worked a lot of late nights.
Oh, a lot of it, yeah. But it's exciting at the same time to see that happen.
It was very exciting. A lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
It was. You had to get it done. The company needed the money, and it was almost as if there was a deadline. But I thought also working, getting all the questions from the analysts, the investors back then, was very interesting. And the Silicon Valley at that time, that was during the dot-com boom, was going through a major transition. And to be part of that was very interesting to see what was going on. Although this company wasn't really a dot-com company.
Right.
They were really working on the first web-based cloud applications. They were sort of pioneers, I would say.
Yeah, that was what year?
Back in 98.
Wow.
99. I'm sorry. Yeah, 99, 2000. I'm sorry.
Right, yeah.
Corrected. Yeah, and you look back and what they were talking about, that everything's going to move off the desktop. It's all going to be remote, and it's going to be on servers, and and you think, wow, that makes sense, because who wants to buy all their software on a desktop?
Yeah.
Everything could be accessed remotely.
Right.
So it was a trend, and that was the direction they were going in, and so that was a good run. And then I jumped over to another company called Diversified Software, and they were going to go public. And but the problem was back in, and I remember when the crash happened, it was 2000, 2001. There was the stock market crashed, as we all know. I remember seeing that, sitting there that day and saying, oh no. And they pulled the IPO, and that's what my primary focus was there.
Yeah.
They had a big finance team, and I was
the
really
initial public offering, and so at that time, times like that, the IPOs dry up.
They dried up
for
a couple.
snow market.
Oh yeah, that was tough then.
Yeah, and that I don't remember exactly how long, but that was a number of months before that would have even been viable to try to go back.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a tough time. That was a tough recession, and we also, the stock market dropped down after the dot-coms just kind of imploded.
Yep.
That was interesting.
Yeah. So where'd you go from there?
Well, I was with a company, investment banking company. I had some friends in the finance world, and I did some investment banking with a company called Worldwide Capital Partners, trying to, doing some investment banking work. They would go in and line up investments, and I would be the numbers guy going in, cleaning up the numbers, looking at the books, and giving them the stories, and sometimes adjusting the numbers, looking at EBITDA, add backs, any non.
I was talking to the client yesterday about EBITDA, which is, and for those not in the business, and for those who don't know, by the way, the accounting world is full of acronyms. We just love our acronyms.
Right.
And one of them is EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So EBITDA. So I was telling the client yesterday, that's what that's for. That's what the acronym is.
Correct.
Trying to help him figure out what EBITDA was in his own personal business. So
Yep.
it's one of the terms we use. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's an important metric. Bankers look at it, investors look at it, and private equity groups. And when you're going through a sale of a company, they will be looking at your EBITDA, and then they'll assign usually a multiple. And there's other ways to value companies, but the EBITDA number seems to be an important benchmark where a lot of discussions come into play.
Yep.
And so it's something you can't ignore, and it's a metric you should probably measure.
Yeah. So from there, where'd you go?
Well, from there, I was with a company called Hudson Financial Solutions nationwide. I got a call to help out on the recent buzz going on, Sarbanes-Oxley.
Oh yeah.
And that was hot and heavy. And so I was I started working with United Airlines, putting in internal controls at the maintenance base, and eventually after 9 months we got all their we got them Sarbanes-Oxley compliant. I was promoted to National Director of Business Risk, and I was the person that would create the documents online for all of the consultants around the country to use as templates to go out and implement Sarbanes.
Right.
And that was an interesting time because that was all new and everybody was trying to interpret the law.
And that was a result of Enron, is that right?
Enron, yes.
Yeah, so the Enron, as people may remember, although a lot of people may, well, our listeners probably know, they're the right age, but Enron, and then so what happened is the Sarbanes-Oxley Act came out and said that basically it's about you have to have a lot more internal control, is that what it was?
Exactly, a lot more corporate governance, starting at the top.
Trying to
of the
prevent
board.
the future Enrons, if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, so you did that for a while, then where'd you go?
Well, then I went into what I do today. I went with a firm called Tatum.
Okay.
And I was there for 3.5 years, worked on various different clients.
So was you basically a CFO for hire?
CFO for hire.
Okay.
National firm of CFOs. It was a partnership at the time, and I was working on various companies in the Bay Area. My two biggest clients was a large electrical contractor, well-known one, in the South Bay, and so I was there for a while. Then I worked on another company for quite a while. It was an online company. They were going public, and they were being sold off. So you had all these various entities, 16 different entities. They'd never been audited. They're on a cash basis, and the accounting is sloppy.
Oh gosh.
So yeah.
Sounds like a nightmare. So what are some of the reasons? A couple minutes before we go to break, what are some of the reasons that people would hire someone like yourself as a CFO for hire? In situations like you're talking about, I mean, there's numerous reasons, right? Maybe they lost their CFO, maybe they've grown so quickly. I mean, what are some of the reasons that people would bring in someone like yourself? Because it's generally your role, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times, or most of the times in a way, it's a temporary role.
Yeah, and
in some cases permanent.
Well, they're usually going through change or transition.
Okay.
Their books sometimes their accounting departments are dysfunctional. So they need financial leadership. They need to get the books from cash to accrual. They're getting audited. There's a transaction coming up. The banks, and I want to point this out, the banks will not lend you money, okay, unless your numbers are good. They won't trust you.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just forget about it.
And it's not just enough that you can say your numbers are good.
Yeah,
they want a
It's
CPA
amazing.
firm to
Well,
opine in some way, review an audit or something. So,
Well, exactly, and they bring me in to help sometimes on audits that happened recently, and in other times I also come in there and I'll clean up the numbers, but then I'll do financial projections and modeling. And what's important is you need to do your projections. Banks require it. You need to have projected income statements, cash flows, and a balance sheet. Now, some people will say, well, why do you need to project the balance sheet? Well, because then you start to look at your working capital. And there's a lot of ratios. You want to project your covenants.
all right, let's hold it right there. We're going to take a commercial break. When we get back, we'll continue the conversation. We're talking with Ed Becmer of Becmer Associates. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers. We'll be right back.
Going all right?
Yeah, it's going good. Feeling all right?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, a lot of thoughts come in. You just which one I want.
Yeah.
So if you ask a question longer, you have time to figure out. Talk. Okay, I'll answer it this way. This is a longer break?
Yeah, this one's coming this long. So if you want to get more it's
This guy can't hold on to a job, can he?
Ouch.
Better not try to run for the Supreme Court. He never got passed without
Oh, no.
throwing him in.
My high school. Well, in accounting and finance, it's just a lot of transition. CFOs. I mean, I remember hearing studies where, the average CFO is like 2 years. A lot of companies.
Sure.
It might be longer up here, but in the Bay Area, I mean, it's just.
Oh yeah, I bet.
It's musical chairs.
Yeah,
It's just musical chairs.
absolutely. Yep.
And,
And if someone is looking at going public, that's a special skill set that not every even CFO has. So I'm sure there's situations where they would want to bring someone like you, and even though they have this competent, good CFO in place, but that person, if you haven't taken someone public, I mean, that's a whole different set of
yeah.
things you got to know.
Oh yeah. I'm working on one right now.
That's looking to go public.
Yeah. Canadian Stock Exchange.
Okay. Yeah, but there's a lot. I was involved in one, 10 generally. I was at PwC when one of our clients were public, so that's the only time we were billing. But I was on the tax side, so I really didn't do much. But I did get the headstone, tombstone, they call them.
Yeah.
I did get one tombstone, so
Yeah,
long
no.
ago. But yeah.
Time for water?
Absolutely. Yep.
Maybe this is a good segue talking about covenants. That's important because you want to have good covenants, favorable covenants for the company, and not ones where the company's going to be tripped up.
Covenants with the bank.
Yeah, and I've been very successful doing that. I did over $42 million in financings in 4+ years, getting companies money.
Yeah.
So that's been a big success thing. My recent successes, and help companies identify over $900,000 in tax credits in R&D and GoBiz. And
Yeah, it's interesting how many people don't take advantage of that.
Yeah.
One of the things Galena did years ago is we really were pushing hard on getting R&D credit for design build firms, construction firms, and a lot of others, when you go to conferences, they'd be like, oh, construction companies don't get the R&D credit. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
We're back to listen to Beyond the Numbers on Monday 1055. Mark Bellows, your host here. I'm a tax CPA with a company called Clifton Larson Allen, CLA. offices throughout the U.S. I'm in the Roseville office. My number is 916-784-7800. My email, mark.bellows@claconnect.com. If you have any questions for me or want advice or just want to give me feedback or whatnot, please feel free to call me or email me, either one of those places. And today we're talking with Ed Becmer of Becmer Associates. Ed's a managing partner. His number is 408-887-0144. So we're talking about you were at Tatum, got a chance to do some CFO for hire for some stuff, and then how'd you get from Tatum to having Becmer Associates?
Well, then briefly I was with, not briefly, another firm for another 3.5 years, doing the same type of work with different companies in the Bay Area. And at that time I decided I felt that I wanted to break away from the firm. I wanted to do it on my own and not have a middleman. So I moved on my own, and I had a large network in the Bay Area, and people know my work and the quality and my reputation. So the phone was ringing, and I was getting opportunities to help companies out.
So was that about how many years ago? 3 years ago?
That was 6 years ago.
6 years, okay.
Yeah.
6 years ago
yeah.
You started Becmer Associates.
Yes. And right away, I was partnering with another firm that was recently, they moved and they were bought off. Their focus went into a different direction, not the CFO consulting work per se. But I was getting a lot of work through them, and working with private equity groups on investments, and working with companies that were going through change that just needed help at the top. I mean, you'd go in there and you look at the numbers and you'd say, who's managing these books? I mean, and I would go in there and do initial assessments, and what that is, I'll go into a company for a couple days and do a quick write-up in terms of what they need, best practices in the finance and accounting area. And I could pretty much tell you that it's usually the same 10, 15 items that are always noted in every company.
What are the couple of those?
Well, I mean, for example, they don't have management reports. They don't measure key metrics and ratios. For example, your receivables. How long does it take to collect your receivables on average? That's called DSOs, and they're not. A lot of companies are not doing that. They're not really analyzing their margins,
right?
Their gross profit margins, and that's very important. I mean, how profitable are you by each customer, by product? And not all accounting systems can do this, but if you can, you should really take a look at that. One company I worked with, they found out they were making 1%. An online an online retailer was selling their products, and with all the rebates they were getting back, they did the math and they were saying, "Wow, these guys, we're not making any money.
How are we doing this? Yeah.
We're paying them to sell our product." That doesn't make. It just makes no sense. So.
And yet there are a lot of companies out there that don't know this stuff, and probably theoretically, at least the bigger companies could have a better chance of knowing. That's not always the case, but smaller and middle-sized companies maybe even tougher, right?
Yeah, it's tougher, and they're trying to scale up, and now they're getting to the point where they're preparing their balance sheet and income statement, they're doing their taxes, and they're trying to get to another level, and there's no visibility. And one of the things that I try to do is I try to get companies to look through the windshield. Okay, this is an important concept, and not always through the rearview mirror. Your historical numbers are the rearview mirror numbers.
Yeah.
But when you start doing projections, modeling, cash flow, looking at metrics, looking at profitability by product and customers, you're looking forward. And accounting and finance is not always looking backwards, but it's looking forward. And that's what I try to really focus on with my clients, to be strategic.
So when you drove here this morning, you didn't do it by looking out the rearview mirror. You looked at the windshield the whole time. What are you talking about?
Yeah, especially with the traffic around here.
Right? Yeah. No, that's a grert point. That's a great point. And there are a lot of companies that don't do that. And a lot of times, smaller companies, they don't have they would say they don't have as much manpower. And a lot of times I've talked to business owners about similar concepts that we're talking about, and their response so often is like, "I'm just too busy. I don't have time to look at that stuff." And the reality is that you need to make time. You need to figure out how to make it work because it's so important.
It's so important. These things, a lot of business owners, they don't know what they don't know, and this stuff is so helpful. I mean, there's so many roadblocks. What happens if we drop into a recession? What happens if, oh my gosh, another competitor gets bought up and now you're competing against an Amazon now, or you know, you gotta have some financial models for the good and the bad.
Yeah.
I think, you know, the good times and the bad times, and understand your cash flow, you know, where you're making money, where you're losing money, and then also where do you deploy the money, you know.
And one of the things I think I saw on your LinkedIn is you developed or worked with dashboards.
Financial dashboards, yes, yeah.
So maybe explain to our listeners a little bit about what those are and the importance of them.
Well, they're important because they're key numbers. They're the numbers that, you know, you drives the business every day. These are, you know, what's your daily sales? What's your pipeline look like? What's your net income, for example? You can do it on a daily basis, or you can do it on a monthly basis. And a lot of the reports I've also designed are on a monthly basis, which gives you all the key metrics and ratios, from DSOs to inventory turnover to accounts payable turnover, gross margin, EBITDA. Even you can put other numbers in there like headcount.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how many people are working in G&A, sales and marketing, and in other areas of the business, or you know, or R&D. So just any numbers that you feel drive the business. And when you get in there and you look under the covers, you find a lot of metrics that are important to each respective business and industry.
Right, right. So you develop these dashboards. Typically, for those that aren't familiar, you would have it up on your computer and you could look at it regularly as you'd like. And
Correct.
It kind of gives you a snapshot in time of where
Correct.
the business is from numerous different metrics.
Correct.
And so it really can really help. Again, it's forward thinking, using historical numbers, but up to the minute historical numbers. So it really gives you the ability to do some
Correct.
forward thinking.
And each ERP system is different, so you have to look at the capabilities of each one and determine what information you can get out there. But you have to you have to do that. It's just, you have your pulse on the business. You have to, in this changing world we live in, you have to be on top of it.
So you started the company 6 years ago. You've been working with numerous businesses. What are some of the types of projects you've worked with companies on?
Well, I mean, one of the things I do a lot of is help bring in new financing and refinancing companies.
Okay.
I've done over $42 million in new bank loans with companies, assisted with that, and everything from lines of credit, lots of lines of credit, to equipment loans,
Mm-hmm.
SBA loans,
Mm-hmm.
Commercial real estate loan, and so very important, because what I do is I get in there and I help clean up the numbers, give credibility, present the numbers to the bank the way they want to see them, explain the numbers to the bank, help do the financial modeling, set the covenants, okay, that are favorable to the company.
And what covenants are, for those that don't know, is any loan, the bank has these requirements that you have to meet, and you have to demonstrate that your financial, your ability to repay the loan is continuing, and so that's what the covenants are getting at.
Yeah, these are ratios that the bank measures to see if you're.
What types of things do they have in there typically?
Current ratio, debt to equity, debt service ratio. They could be a tangible net worth equity. They have to maintain a minimum certain amount of capital. There could be a profitability, that you have to be profitable each quarter. So there can be a lot of them, and there can be a few of them. And I've found some regional banks here in Sacramento that are very aggressive in lending money. And I've actually worked out deals where companies don't have to do a normal borrowing base certificate, where they have to report monthly their accounts receivable and inventory,
Right.
which is very tedious.
Yeah.
Which limits your ability to borrow based on how much collateral
Right.
that you have.
Right.
So 1 month you can have a lot of collateral and be borrowing a lot of money, then the next month you're underwater because your receivables and your inventory is down.
Right.
So I've been able to get some very favorable deals, and there's certain banks that are very aggressive. They're regional, smaller banks. They're lending aggressively in this climate, and it really has been beneficial to the company because it reduces the compliance.
Right.
And if you can make the covenants a little more friendly, then the chances of the company tripping up on a covenant become a lot less.
And what happens when they trip up on the covenant?
Well,
typically the bank has the ability to call the loan.
that's
right?
correct, and I've been there, and yes, and that happened. The company, for a couple quarters, one company tripped up on a covenant, didn't make it, and the bank came back, said, we'll work with you, we'll work with you. And then they had an overadvance on their line of credit, which means the collateral went below the loan for a couple months. And then your friendly banker says, you know what, I'm struggling with this. You're gonna work with our other friendly banker here down in Southern California, and he's with our special assets group. And basically, when they move you into the special assets group, these are not friendly people. They're looking to get repaid.
At banks nowadays, over the last number of years, certainly since the last Great Recession, the regulators that are more stringent.
Yes.
And they're more diligent. I don't say more diligent, but certainly more stringent. And so,
Yes.
Meeting the covenants is a lot more important. It's more and more difficult nowadays to talk your way out of.
Correct.
Or to get an extension.
Correct.
Because the regulators are just looking at this stuff so much more closely. Okay, we're going to take a break. We're talking with Ed Becmer today here at Becmer Associates. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers. We'll be right back.
One more session?
Yep.
Jeez.
See what I mean? Time flies. So, I'll say in the next one we can get into the types of clients you look for.
Yeah.
So, what would be an ideal client for you? And then, do you want to get into community service, community activities?
I donate through my neighbors, their causes a lot. I've been involved in Big Brothers Big Sisters, leukemia, lymphoma leukemia. Donate money to Alzheimer's.
I mean, if you wanted, there's something specific you wanted to talk about community-wise, we can. Otherwise, we don't have to. So, just give you the option.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling it out up here, which way I want to go, which organization I'm going to be involved in.
Okay.
I took a gentleman out, President of Red Cross, golfing. I wouldn't mind being on their board. He was the president. Any trends you want to talk about? Or are you going to talk about companies? Okay.
And we're back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers on my 105.5 FM. Mark Bellows, your host here. I'm a tax CPA, a principal with Clifton Larson Allen in the Roseville office. Excuse me, you can get a hold of me, mark.bellows@claconnect.com or 916-784-7800. If you have tax questions, I work with manufacturers and distributors, contractors, and real estate investors and developers. The businesses, their owners with planning, strategy, compliance, that sort of thing. And today we are talking with my guest here, Ed Becmer of Becmer Associates. And Ed's been talking about, we got through his extensive background, which a lot of great experience that led him to the point where today where he can be the kind of consultant he is. He's got so much experience, such a good varied background. So what with Becmer Associates, where you go and in general do a CFO and a controller type, for hire type businesses, and more than that, it sounds like. But what's your ideal client?
Excellent question, Mark. And it can be varied. Most of the companies range from $10 million, maybe a little smaller, up to 50 million or more. They're usually, sometimes they really don't have the financial horsepower to get them to the next level, to scale. They're looking for money with their bank, or they're looking to refinance. And a lot of times I get referred by investors, private equity groups, mezzanine funds, and actually banks refer me as well, and CPA firms. So they're going through change, and there's usually sometimes an audit that's going on. And because I had an extensive audit background, I go in and help lead the process and make sure that's getting done, because there's a time deadline, and investors want the reports. And
so when you say audit, you mean the financial statement?
Financial statements, yeah.
So.
And also I get my ideal client may be looking to do mergers and acquisitions as well.
So you work both at that with someone who's
Yes.
a company that's looking at being sold or
bought.
by yourself?
Yes,
Okay.
yep. So they're either looking to buy companies or they're looking to be sold. And then we start to look at the EBITDA numbers if you're looking to be sold. I know some private equity groups out there that will take a look at the company and see give their thoughts in terms of, what the value of it is, and then provide their expertise in selling the company.
Well, I've been involved in a couple of companies that have sold and bought companies as well, so on both sides. But generally, what happens is nowadays you set up this file room of documents,
Right.
and there's a lot of documentation that goes in there.
Correct.
And so a lot of it would be the responsibility of the CFO to make sure what needs to get in there gets in there.
Correct.
And so it's a big management.
It is.
It's big. A lot of your role is managing that process.
You're absolutely right. You're quarterbacking the whole process.
Yeah.
And I did an IPO, and you're quarterbacking that.
Same thing with IPOs.
Yeah, you're working with attorneys, you're working with the CPAs, you're working with other outside consultants, you're working with management, you're coordinating that, and you're actually doing project management.
Yeah, that's a lot of what that is.
It is, project management.
Which is someone like yourself, that's a valuable experience, so that when the company's looking to go public, they bring in a project manager like you that's gone
Correct.
through it before,
Correct.
versus someone who hasn't, because
That's correct.
it's a big deal. It's a lot of work managing that.
It is.
There's tight deadlines quite often, and you just can't delay. So.
But getting back to the original question, I really think it's companies looking to scale. They're looking to grow. They're looking to go to that next level. They're looking for financing, or they're looking for investors, or they're looking to they figured out they're not going to grow organically. They want to acquire a competitor, or they want to, as I alluded, they want to sell a business in the future. They want succession planning. They want to figure out that strategy. And so, these are situations where I come in and help put out the fire. And sometimes the companies are burning.
Yes, you're
literally burning.
Yeah. So, excuse me. What? How many companies do you work with at a time? Typically one, or do you do multiple?
It varies. 1 to 3
Okay.
is usually the norm. Right now, I'm partnering with a national CFO firm on an engagement to roll up some companies and take them public.
Okay.
Reverse takeover, an RTO they call it in Canada. Reverse takeover.
Okay.
So I'm helping with the audit and the public filing documents on that company, and there's a crunch on that because they want to go public fairly soon here.
Right.
So again, there's pressure to get the numbers done and
Yeah.
to get the audit done.
Sure, I bet. So, what other types of things are you working on right now, or have you worked on recently?
Well, most recently financings.
Okay.
Replaced 2 lines of credit with a large major bank with a regional bank here, and got them very favorable terms. What I alluded to earlier, which was favorable covenants and
Right.
less onerous reporting requirements, monthly reporting requirements, and so these companies are very happy that they got a bank they can work with, and it's leading to additional financing down the road for them.
Right. And you work with companies. You mentioned Canada, so you work with companies throughout North America, throughout the world.
Could be throughout the world,
Okay.
Primarily Northern California. I always
Okay.
prefer Sacramento area because it's closer to my home. But
Yes. Yeah.
Recently I've worked with some companies in Napa and Reno. So geographically, there's no limitations. And nowadays with the internet, you can work on stuff remotely from anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's our nature of our work. We don't always have to be there unless there's a major meeting. And when you're doing a financial model, I can do it from my home office,
Sure.
or I can do it
Sure.
at the company.
Yeah.
But I do like to be at the company. I like to learn the culture. I like to know what's going on, who's calling the shots, and I hear, I learn a little bit more about the company when I see visibly what's going on.
Sure. And again, being in person, I would imagine you can learn more about the accounting department that's there,
Absolutely.
and the other departments,
Absolutely.
and how they interact and how they work together. It's one thing to see it from afar, but it's another to be in the midst of it to actually see.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like to be there too.
Yeah. It's important to be there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe we've got a few more minutes left. Maybe give us an example of some lessons you've learned along the way.
Well, just quickly here, I would give you a few. I want to tell people cash is king. We all know that. But I'm going to mention, do not forget about the balance sheet. The balance sheet is very important. Banks put a lot of credibility around the balance sheet. You don't want to be upside down.
Right.
You don't want your ratios to be in the negative. And so remember, balance sheet is important because it'll drag you backwards. I would always say, always be planning for the future, for a rainy day. Have a rolling forecast, and think about succession planning as well. And a lot of small little companies that have partners, LLCs, Don't forget to have a buy-sell agreement, maybe with life insurance. That's when someone leaves the company. There's an agreement in terms of how do we break up, what happens,
Yeah.
how much that person gets.
That's an important concept, because I've seen situations, and you probably have as well, where there wasn't a buy-sell in place, and then one of the owners or partners goes through a death or a divorce or
right.
whatnot, and then it just complicates things terribly, because quite often people think this is worth X times 10. Look at it, it's tremendously valuable. You know, the reality is, no, maybe it's worth X times 3 or 5.
Right.
And so that is what you want the buy-sell to address, how you get it valued. Otherwise, someone's like, I'm not gonna get out of this thing, you're trying to pay me too, you're trying to rip me off. People get emotional in that kind of, in those types of situations. So I agree, it's very important to have buy-sell agreements.
True. And also, you know, you can do an employee employee stock ownership plan, an ESOP.
Have you worked on ESOPs, or have you gone with ESOPs before?
I personally haven't, but I know an outfit that does,
Yeah.
so that becomes highly recommended, but that's an option you could explore. Or, you know, and then finally, a strategic buyer is obviously a way to go, and a large
Sure.
company can buy
Sure.
the app. I talked about some of the other things I have noted here, but I still want to bring back, emphasize management reports that I talked about earlier, flash reports with the key metrics. I think that's very important. The extent companies can develop those is going to be very helpful. And I will also note here, budgets. Budgets are still valuable. A lot of companies don't use budgets, but I still think there is some value. We all know that by the third, fourth quarter, a lot of them they go stale. But comparing your numbers to something is better than comparing your numbers to nothing.
Yeah.
It gives you sort of a benchmark in terms of where you are during the year.
I know with our firm, for instance, our office, we do an office budget, and we use that to determine hiring, make hiring decisions and personnel decisions, and staffing, and it's all three same things. But anyway, that's a big part of it, and so you got to know that.
You got to know that. It's just a helpful tool to have. And then finally, I want to tell folks, the numbers tell a story. Accounting is a language. Understand the story. What are your numbers telling you about your business? Take a deep dive. And when you talk to someone like myself or any other professional, or your outside CPA, the numbers are saying something to you, and you need to understand what they're telling you. And there's a lot of things you can do with the numbers, and simple things, as I mentioned, calculating ratios and metrics. Going through that process and understand where you're making money, where you're losing money, where you're strong, where you're weak. What's the cash flow look like? Do you have enough cash to survive the next 90 days or 100 or 6 months?
Yeah.
And it'll tell you a lot about your business.
Right.
Because we dig down and we comb through the numbers and we tell the story. Sometimes the story is a lot different than what the owners are seeing it.
That's a great point, Ed. Thanks. We've been talking today with Ed Becmer, Becmer Associates. As a managing partner, if you want to get a hold of him, 408-887-0144. You're listening Beyond the Numbers. Thanks again. Thanks a lot. And we'll be back again next week. Take care, everyone.
Well, that was quick.
Right. Always.